Here's an example of code that deals with prices and discounts. As you can see, I'm using a primitive type here to represent those things, floating points in this case. Now, the problem is that these things can't be just any value you like. A discount has to be between 0 and 1 because it's a percentage. Price has to be non-negative. And that's why we have this validation code here in the apply discount function. Now, the problem is that if you add more functionality to this code, you add extra functions that do other things with prices and discounts or percentages, you're going to end up with this type of validation code all over the place. Also, because these primitive types don't really have any extra information, it's really easy to make mistakes. Is a value of 0.2 at 20% or 0.2% discount? Is a price already rounded to 2 decimals or not? In what unit is it expressed? Is it cents or the currency unit? We simply don't know by looking only at these primitive types. So today I want to show you one of the most underrated design patterns in Python, the value object pattern. And it's really simple, but still very useful. And you know what's also useful? Well, I'm working on a brand new program called Software Design Mastery. This is not just another online course, it's a full program that teaches you the fundamentals. How to think about design, refactoring, modeling real-world problems in Python. This program goes way beyond what I teach here on YouTube. If you want to become really good at software design, get access early, and you don't want to miss this, join the waiting list for free at ArjanCodes/mastery. The link is also in the description. Now, like I said, in this particular example, I'm using primitive types to represent things like prices and discounts. If you do that too much, that's also called primitive obsession, where all your domain concepts are represented as primitives. Prices as floats, discounts as float, email addresses as strings. Now, the problem is not that primitive types like strings or floats are bad per se. The problem is that these primitive types don't carry any meaning, they don't enforce any rules, and they don't explain any intent. So every function that you write by using these primitive types ends up defensively validating all the inputs, and inevitably you're going to forget one of these validations, and then you're going to introduce bugs in your code. In this particular example, like I said at the start of the video, there's assumptions everywhere, like discount is supposed to be between 0 and 1, but we can't understand that from the signature of the function. We also assume that price is non-negative, and floating point inaccuracies, which can be a problem with prices, well, we're not really dealing with them at all. And the usual fix is to just add checks everywhere, which, well, it works, but it doesn't really scale because you will repeat the same rules. The behavior depends on developer discipline, rules become kind of tribal knowledge, and this is exactly what value objects are meant to fix. Now, a value object that actually comes from domain-driven design is an object that is typically immutable, and you compare it by value, not by identity. And the most important thing is that it's responsible for enforcing its own invariance. So the core idea is that when you have value objects, you validate once when you create it, and then you can trust the value everywhere else. And basically, what this will do for you is that it's going to make it much harder or impossible even to represent invalid states, like a negative price or a discount that's more than 100%. So how would you represent a value object in Python? Well, one thing that you can do is use a data class for that. And let's create a class called price. And one thing that we can do, we want value objects to be immutable, so we can actually make it frozen, like so. And then price is going to have a value, which will be a floating point. And then what we can do in our post-init methods is that we actually validate the value. So we could check that if self.value is negative, then we're going to raise a value error. Price must be non-negative, like so. And now we can do, instead of passing a float here, we can pass a price object. Of course, this needs to be price.value. And this check we no longer need here because that's already encoded into the price object. And since it's frozen, we won't be able to change the value after the fact. So here, what I'll do is create a price object, and then I can do the same thing in the other examples. So, and as you can see, here is a third example where the price is actually negative. So now what happens if I run this code, you see that actually we get this value error that price is non-negative. And that is handled by our frozen data class. And I don't need to put the validation logic here anymore. And of course, I can do the same thing for percentages. So let's create a class, percentage. This will also have a value. And here we can put the validation for percentages, again, in a post-init method. Let's copy over this code. And of course, this is going to be self.value. Like so. And now, instead of passing a float here, we can pass the percentage. We don't need validation anymore. Dot value. And then we specify the percentage like so. And in this particular example, we have a percentage that is way too big because it's more than 1. So when I run this, you see that we get a value error, and probably we need to change the error itself by saying that a percentage must be between 0 and 1. The nice thing about this approach is that we have non-mutable values, and validation happens when we create them. And then wherever we use these things, we can be sure that they actually have the value that we expect. And in apply discount, you also see that the signature is now clearer. We know that we expect a price, and we also know that this is supposed to be a percentage. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. And everywhere else you use these things, well, you can also assume that these invariants actually are held. Now, if you find the data class approach a bit annoying because you have to access it by doing .value every time, there's a couple of things you can do to fix that in Python. One is that you define operations here, like adding, multiplication, etc. And then you can treat this more or less like a number. Another thing you can do is actually not use a data class, but inherit from float. Now, float itself is immutable, so this is still an immutable value, which is nice. So then we can remove this, and then we can implement new, which is what is called when we call price with parentheses. And there, what we can do is, so we get the value, let's say that's of type any. Let's turn it into a float. And then we check whether that value is negative. And if it is, we raise the value error. And then finally, we're going to return, actually this should be self. Then we're going to return supercall of new. And we're going to pass the class and the value like so. This gives me a price object that behaves more or less like a float. And remember, floats in Python are objects. Float is a class, so we can do this. And now what I can do is, instead of doing price.value, I can simply do the multiplication because that's defined for floating point values. And now what I can do here is, I don't have to change anything here, but here it becomes a lot easier to deal with. On the other hand, you might think this is kind of hacky and you prefer the data class approach. Let me know which one of these you prefer in the comments. So if you want to do the same thing for percentages, then it would look something like this. And then I can also remove the dot value here. And then we simply have this check right here that the percentage needs to be between 0 and 1. Now, because it's a class, maybe you want to do some extra thing. Let's say you also want to be able to get a percentage from a value between 0 and 100. That might be useful, right? Well, in that case, that's nice. You can actually define a class method that does that. And then, of course, we have to divide the value by 100 and then return that. So now what you can do is, in this case, we wanted to use a percentage of 20. I can do from %, and then that is going to work just fine. So when I run this, now it actually works as expected. So that's another nice thing about the value objects, that you have a bit more flexibility in how you create them. And by the way, if you're enjoying this kind of design-focused Python content, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. Final example that I want to show you is with email addresses, which is also a really good use case of value objects. Now, not all value objects have to behave like primitives, right? We've seen that in the previous example. We could use a data class instead of a float. But for email addresses, this is also very useful. So for example, here I have a regular expression that checks whether an email address is valid. Actually, this is a hugely simplified regular expression. An actual regular expression for checking emails can be way more complex, especially if you want to exclude or include certain domains. But here I have a data class, also frozen. So it's an immutable object where we have an email address that has a value. And we have a post-init method, just like we had before, where we do this check. So if the regular expression doesn't match the value, well, we're going to raise a value error. But then, because we have a class, we can do other things like adding a property that gives us the domain. Or maybe you want to do other things with email addresses, and that's now really easy to do. And when I run this, then you see it prints the domain as expected. But if I try to create an email address that is not valid, then again, of course, we're going to get this value error. So this is the same pattern that we see before. There is an invariant, which is defined by this regular expression. Behavior, like extracting the domain, lives with the data. And we don't have to do this check every time we add an email address. So it's a really nice solution. So a few caveats. One thing is Pydantic. You may think, well, if we have these value objects, we could actually use Pydantic to validate them, right? Well, yes, you can do that. You can definitely implement value objects with Pydantic, but it also adds, of course, extra overhead. And for pure domain concepts, I actually like using data classes that are frozen or simple Python classes. It's a bit simpler, easier, one less dependency to worry about. But you definitely can if you want to. Another thing you might wonder is an enum a value object? So enums, they represent a finite set of labels, right? You have different objects. That's not exactly what value objects are, because value objects, they have the valid values, but with rules and invariants. So a value object should check that it's actually valid. An enum simply answers which option is this. And the value object is more about, hey, is this valid and how does it behave? So enums, of course, they can support value objects, but they don't replace them. So in my opinion, value objects are a really nice design improvement that you can make in Python. They help fight primitive obsession by centralizing rules and validation, making the intent explicit, and preventing bad data from spreading. You don't need any specific architecture or special frameworks to get these benefits, though you can use Pydantic if you want to, but you don't really need them. You can build them with simple Python classes and data classes to get all the benefits. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you use value objects like this in your code? Do you think it makes sense at all? Let me know in the comments. Now, if you want to explore more software design patterns like this one, check out my design patterns playlist right here. Thanks for watching and see you next time.